Breaking the cycle to step forward. Authentic conversations from lived experience and a professional perspective in overcoming abuse with Chris Tuck and Beverley Ann.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Breaking the Cycle to Step Forward podcast with myself, Chris Tuck, and my lovely co-host,
Beverley Ann.
So we have a lovely guest with us today. Her name is Tina, and we'll let her introduce herself in a moment. But this podcast is all about how you can turn your own pain into healing whilst doing good for others or organisations. So let me leave that there simmering, let your brain work out what we're going on about, and then we will just allow Tina to introduce herself.
Hi, my name's Tina. I am a single mum, 3 children, on my 3rd degree, a nursing, mental health nursing degree, and a keen runner and cycler, and fitness enthusiast. And I have a keen interest and a passion around violence against women and girls and domestic abuse.
That's why she's a guest on our podcast, everyone.
I'm loving the bike behind you, Tina.
Thank you.
I haven't actually met you myself. So one of the questions that I'm always interested in, and because we're very nosy, Chris and I anyway, but how do you know Chris? How did you meet her?
I met Chris because I was about to run my 4th marathon, and I wanted to raise some money for a local charity. So I started looking around, and I was aware of a local charity in our area called Kaleidoscope. So I got in contact with them, but they were no longer operating in our area. So they made me aware of Chris and survivors of abuse and said, get in contact. It's a good charity to look into. And so I contacted Chris. We had a coffee and we discussed the charity, and I went and raised some money.
Fantastic. Because I know the area you come from, which I'm not going to talk about because I've lived around that area as well. So over to you, Chris.
So Tina ran the Manchester Marathon, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Your 4th marathon, you said, and you blew your time out of the water, didn't you?
Yeah, just a bit.
How did you manage that? So how did you go from your 3rd marathon and your time, which you'll share with us in a moment, to what you did achieve it in? How did you manage that?
Just consistent training, really. So I've been running for just over 6 years now. And I ran my first marathon, just look on my bracelet, in 2022. I did it in Brighton. And I raised money for a different domestic violence charity then as well. But it was a struggle. It took me 5 hours and 17 minutes, my first marathon. And it was a huge achievement. You know, it's a huge accomplishment, and it was very hard work, but I did it. And then I ran another one the following year, again at Brighton. This time I ran it alongside my dad and my big brother, and we did it in about 5.5 hours. And then I did it for a 3rd time, again at Brighton, and I managed 5 hours and 7 minutes. But that time I was also struggling with the plantar fasciitis, so a pain in my foot, which was a struggle, but we did it. And I was pleased because I'd beaten my times from before. And then I decided I'm fed up with Brighton. I'm not doing it anymore. And so I really, really want to do London, but I didn't get into the ballot. And so we booked into Manchester, which was actually on the same day as London this year. And me, my brother, my dad, my partner, my mum, my daughter, we all drove up to Manchester and did the marathon. And I did it in 3 hours and 54 minutes. So I was ecstatic. I was the fastest of my crew to have done it. So I was absolutely like amazed. especially because my partner is generally quite a faster runner than me, and I'd even beaten his time. So I was really pleased. But over the last year, I have been doing a lot of training. And I've also been really consistent in terms of my nutrition and my diet. And I lost 20 kg as well in weight over the last year. So I think that definitely helped a lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And can I just say, I understand the challenges of marathons. So my personal best was last year at Brighton, but that was 7 hours 20.
Wow. It's a hilly one.
It is. Oh, and I'm not a runner, I'm a walker, and I say that. But it's that feeling when you get over the finish line. But to do it in the time you did is amazing.
Well,
A whole hour and 15 minutes at least off.
Something
When
like
you
that.
put it up, I was like, she got that right. Oh my God, that's just amazing progress in a year. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
Very,
it just shows you that consistent and persistent action towards anything will show gains.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've got to ask you, what is it that spurs you on? Where do you get this drive and passion from?
Because your third degree as well, Tina, that's hard. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's I find solace in doing things like this. You know, I find that if I can put my mind to something and achieve something, it in a way it gives my self-value. You know, it makes it gives me value. So, you know, when I was younger and I was in a very abusive relationship, my one escape was education. You know, I went back into education, I went back into studying, and I went in hard because it was the only thing that gave me respite. And so I went back to college. I did my what was it called? National Diploma in Care. I did. And I got a triple distinction. I'd worked really hard, and I'd had my first son, and my second son was born in my second year of college. I took a month off, went back to college, completed the course, and then my teacher said, you need to go on to university. And I went to university and I did a degree, my first degree in youth and community studies. So I did that for 3 years, and my daughter was born in right at the end of my second year. So the third year I took part-time. So it took me 4 years to complete my first degree, but I did that. And then I went out to work and worked in the youth sector for quite a while. And then I went, I used to work in a community youth service, and during COVID, the work became less because we couldn't go out into the community. So I took a job in the NHS and I worked in sexual health. And I did that for a year, and then I moved into haematology. And then I decided that I was going to do my nursing degree. So I did a nursing degree, a foundation nursing degree, completed that. And then I decided that I didn't want to work in general nursing, and I moved into mental health, and now I'm doing my mental health nursing degree. So it's been a long journey, and I've dipped my toe into many different areas, but just being able to have those achievements and have something to focus my mind on. But as well, my children now, my eldest is almost 20. And so, you know, he's older than I was when I had him now. And to be able to show my children that, you know, you can achieve these things, you can put your mind to things, you know, just having them have that example is really important to me as well. So they're the things that really keep me going.
It's amazing.
Can I
Well
just
done.
ask, you said it was the thing that gave you value. Do you feel that it was the thing that you had power and control over yourself when you was going through those difficult times? Because
Yes.
we talk on this podcast about people either being frozen in their trauma, not being able to achieve, and that's no judgment, that's just fact.
Mhm.
Or there's people like ourselves, and Bev and I have spoken about this before, where we've just gone at it hard. Work, 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 study, 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 work, 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 study, study, study. So there's like two almost extremes of trying to deal with what it is you've gone through, but you're either stuck in freeze mode or you're in fight flight mode, which is what I've just described. Would
Yeah,
you resonate with that?
definitely. And it's not just in my studying and in my fitness now, it's in throughout my whole entire being. So I'm very methodological. So, you know, everything I do, it's very structured, you know, even in the way I raised my children. It's very structured. From they was very young, I was very structured, very routine based. I like to have control over as much things as I can. The cleanliness of my home, to the point that it's almost OCD to an extent, you know. And I feel it in my mind as well, you know. My mind is constantly going. I'm constantly setting out my day. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. This is how I'm going to do it. And I'm very everything has to be in sequence. And I do feel like a lot. It's a constant thread throughout everything that I do.
Is it
So
exhausting enough for you, or is it a way of survival? Is it exhausting, or is just that the way that you are and you're okay with that?
I think it's the way I am now, and I am okay with it, but I do require periods of stillness.
Mhm.
I do. I like to be in my own company. I like my own time. I like quiet. So, but even that I structure into my day.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I do need those times to rejuvenate, you know, and have those recovery periods. But even that I structure in.
And to some people listening, that's really hard for people to, when you say structure in, because we get so used to putting into, say, for instance, our diaries, our work needs and everybody else's needs, that often our own self needs, our own self-care, get forgotten. And I know that when I was learning to balance out all those needs, I was taught to actually structure in, diarise time for myself. And it's something that I do now automatically.
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar for you, or have you always structured it in? How was it for you, Tina?
I haven't always structured it in. You know, being a single parent, you can't when your children are younger. But the way that I raised my children was that I made them very self-sufficient, so that in our home, it wasn't my home and you live in it. It was our home. So we all have responsibility here. We all do the washing, we all do the cooking, we all do the cleaning, you know, we all take the bins out. My children know how to do all of those things, and they've known how to do it from quite a young age. And because I was a youth worker and I saw a lot of young people reaching 16, 17, 18 and didn't have basic living skills, it really spurred me on to make sure that my children could do those things and be independent. And so because I structured that in when they were younger, now that they're older, they're very self-sufficient. I don't have to cook every single evening. We take turns. My children are amazing cooks. They're better than me. I hate cooking. It feels like a chore, but you know, because they have that level of responsibility and structure, and you know, we can all do bits and pieces, and it frees me up to be able to not have to be the sole provider. Like, I don't have to do all of those things all of the time, and you know, I don't have to be constantly entertaining them. And you know, they know they've got to do their schoolwork, they know they've got to, whoever's turn it is to make dinner, you know. So I've even controlled my life enough to know that looking forward, that was the kind of thing that I needed in our house to make it work. So but now my daily routine, when I like to rise early and I go to sleep early, so the children are usually up later than me, but when it gets to the evening time, they know that's my time to come. I need to come down now. So yes, it is, I don't diarize it, but it's just a given now.
Yeah.
It's really interesting what you just said there. So I was really listening to it carefully, because, and we've never really spoken about this before on any podcast, to my recollection. When you've gone through trauma and gone through abuse and you're living with the daily trauma, many people that I know don't have that kind of structure, and they almost want to give so much to their children because of the way that they were abused and they never got what they needed, that we've overcompensated and given to our children, to the extent where we may have made them not be able to turn up in the world and advocate for themselves or do what they need to do, like you created for your children. And I really love what you've done. You know, it's not my home, it's all of our home. Yeah. Whereas I've probably bent over backwards and done all my kids' washing, all of that, you know, I've done everything for them. So I've not really equipped them as well as I would like to of. And there are people in my family network that haven't even been able to step up for themselves because of their trauma impact. So their children have not got their needs met. And that is also tipping over into the areas of where some adults can't look after their children. So their children may have been taken from them because they've not been able to step up for themselves, no judgment, but then not been able to meet the needs of their children, where you've gone completely the other way. And it's refreshing to hear. It may come across to some people as a bit Sergeant Major, but no.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah, but I think you've given your kids the tools that they need to be self-sufficient. And it's given you breathing space to do what you need to do. Bev, what do you make of what Tina shared with us?
I'm listening as well, because being a parent is always hard. It's always under the microscope and judgmental. I mean, you only have to see some of the groups on social media, and you know, everyone makes a judgment. And I tried to get the balance of both, because I remember when my son was 13 and he needed a rugby kit being washed several times because he played for played for the school and a group. And I said, I work full time, I can wash it twice, but I'll teach you how to use the washing machine, and you choose if you want to turn up in practice in clean or dirty rugby kit. And his words at that time were, that's women's work. And I said, I tell you what, the bigger man is the man that's able to clean, cook and look after his family. That's what a real man is. Now he does all those things within his own family. And if I was to remind him now, he'd go, oh. So, yeah, I suppose also from my background as well, I came from being in care, and also I ran the family. So I wanted them to have the skills to be independent. But on the other hand, I did very much want to wrap them up in cotton wool.
Yeah.
So there is no right way.
And I was just about to echo that, Bev, that there is no right way. But also, Tina, because you were a single mum for a long time with 3 children, you said, didn't you?
Yeah.
You had to have more of a regimented way of living, because otherwise it would have probably sunk you, like it does sink many people.
Definitely. And I think as well, my own childhood was very much very, very sheltered. My mum was one of those mums that did everything for us. She did all of our washing, she did all of the cooking. We weren't allowed in her kitchen, you know, she fed us. So I left home at 16. I didn't know how to use a tin opener, basic things. I didn't know how to use the washing machine. And then I had a baby and I was 18 years old and I had to do all of these things for my own son and my own children. And I didn't have those skills and I had to learn them. And so for me, I want my children to be able to do those things, not because I want them to not have a sheltered life. I would love them to be able to, live the soft life, but, it would only be to their detriment, because I knew what it was like to leave home without basic skills. And, it might seem harsh, but in the long run, they don't need to worry about those things. They can go off in life to university or to their own homes and their own families, and they will be able to use a tin opener, change their own bed sheets and cook basic meals and be able to sustain themselves. And I think that there is a balance between, keeping things like quite regimented and those skills and things, and then having times where, they can relax and things. And I think for me, my children being around the same age that I was when I started my family, they don't have those pressures that I had of being a parent. So to me, I feel like, your life is easier in that sense, because you don't have that level of responsibility. I had to go out and I worked full time. I've always worked full time since I was 16. I've never not worked alongside my studies as well as having the children. So for me to be able to give my children the freedom to be able to explore what they'd like to do for work and what they enjoy and what they like, without having the responsibilities and pressures of being a parent or having your own home and bills and things like that. I don't ask them to contribute financially to anything, but I ask them to contribute to the upkeep of our home, and I think that's a fair deal, to be honest.
100%. I'm just like, the thing is, when we say discipline within a family home, the word discipline means to teach. And you're a shining example of, you've taught your kids what they needed to do to be self-sufficient. But it's really shows how we were brought up and then how we in turn parent, doesn't it? And as we said, there's no judgment, there's no right or wrong. There is just, this needs to happen this way in order for us to be able to function and have these outcomes. And that is how each household probably should be trying to put into its own self to be able to be productive. But there are a lot of people that we know who have gone through forms of abuse that then can't function in their household. And I think that is where individuals need to actually realise that there is a way of parenting that can be beneficial for everybody in the household rather than detrimental. Because in my household, there was alcoholics, there was people not stepping up and providing what should have been provided to us as children and young people. And then when we've left and we've gone on to, have our own families, it has been a struggle. And I just think that if you're going to become a parent, you need to understand that there are certain things required of you to be a parent. Whether you know it or not, we have to step up and be responsible for these human beings.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one of the best ways is learning from ourselves inwardly, and we radiate out naturally. Tina, I'd like to ask some questions. And again, as we always say to anybody, you share what you want to share. So, but just, you were saying about your mum, when you were brought up, your mum, don't come in my kitchen. So she was very protective. So, and then you mentioned later on that, when you were doing your study, that was your solace, because at the time you were going through an abusive relationship. Now, we never realise when we're in that relationship it's abusive. I remember when, I had somebody come up and give me a leaflet, and I was like, oh no, I don't need that, thank you very much. But I appreciated that they gave me the information. For you, what was the defining point, or was it a few things that you suddenly thought, this isn't right? what happened for you, Tina?
For me, you know, first off, my mum, although she was very protective of her kitchen, it was because I'm quite similar to my mom. She wanted that control of her space, as I do. You know, I like to have my own space and I like things in order, but I think we demonstrate that in different ways now because I've experienced her way of doing things, and now I have been able to reflect on how she's done it and then done things my own way with my own children. You know, I had a brilliant childhood. You know, we were very cared for. I had 2 brothers and a sister, you know, and we had the best. We weren't well off at all. And I don't think I was really fully aware of that until I became a parent myself. But we didn't have much. You know, we lived on a council estate, but we had a brilliant childhood. You know, we was always out playing. We got to go away on caravan holidays with our family and our extended family, and it was amazing. You know, I did have a really brilliant childhood. It wasn't until I got to secondary school that things started to come apart. You know, when I was 14, that was when I met my 2 eldest sons. They share a dad, and my daughter has a different dad. Yeah. So I met my boy's dad when I was in high school. I was 14 years old, and I went to a house party with a girl in my class, and she also lived on the same road as me. And we went to this house party, and I was assaulted there by some lads. And my boy's dad was at this house, and he saw what was going on. I think he came there to partake in what was happening. But then when he got there, I think he felt a bit guilty. And I didn't know where I was really. So he took me out of the house and took me to the bus stop, and I was able to get home. And that's how I met him. So I think immediately there was this, I should feel some kind of gratitude towards you. You know, I should feel thankful to you for taking me away from that situation. And so I started meeting up with him outside of school, and he lived locally, but he wasn't in school. He was in trouble and dropped out of school. And I think over time, he sort of was able to isolate me from my family and my friends. Like, I'm the only one that cares about you. You know, I look after you. And at 14, I thought it was a nice thing to do. I hadn't experienced anything like it before. You know, I'd never been aware of abuse and things like that. My parents had a great relationship. You know, it just wasn't on my radar. And then because I was seeing him quite a lot, I got into quite a few arguments with my dad, and I left home. I left and moved into his family home with his mum. And that's when things started to really get bad, where he would accuse me of cheating. I was working full time. I worked in a local clothes shop in town, and he would pick me up from work, and he would go through my phone, and he'd be like, "Who are you talking to?" And then it got physical, and he would assault me. And he would do this in the family home, and his mum would be aware, and she would come in, but she wouldn't necessarily stop things. There was a time when he pushed his own mum over, like, "Get out of my way." She was on the floor, you know. So I felt like, looking back, she kind of didn't really stop things and was more of an enabler, making excuses. "You're upsetting him. You know what he's like." Yeah. And then I got pregnant with my first son. We moved out. I was moved into a council flat, and the abuse just continued. I went to college. After I had my first son and I was on maternity leave, the store that I worked in closed down. It went into administration. So I didn't have that job to return to. So I went back to college, and that's when I started doing some youth work as well. And that was a bit of an escape for me. It was a bit of time away, where I didn't have to be around him.
Yeah.
And I knew things weren't right, and I didn't want to tell anyone about it. His mum was aware, his sisters were aware, they were all in the house when this was going on. But because there wasn't anything really being done about it by his own family, I didn't really think there was much I could do about it. And I didn't want to tell my own family, because I'd left home and I felt so ashamed, like I didn't want to go back. And then when I had my own son and I had my own flat, it's like, well, this is my flat, like, you go away, kind of thing. Like, why should I have to go home? This is my home, this is our son's home. And then there'd be multiple times where we'd have arguments and I'd tell him to leave and he'd come back and he'd kick the door off or you know, lock me in a room and things. And then I had my second son when I was at college, and I would go to college and he would come to the college in my breaks so that I could breastfeed my baby and go back into class. But it was also a way of him to keep an eye on me. You know, he would be able to make sure that during my breaks, I wasn't seeing anyone else or telling anyone about him, I suppose. And then the final sort of straw came when we was at home one afternoon and one of his brothers came to visit us, and he went to another room and was scrolling through my phone, accusing me of cheating again. And I went into the room and I'm like, what are you doing? And he was like, you're seeing someone else. And he hit me in my face and busted my lip. And it was because his brother had seen him do it, and it was in front of someone, that it was like, it's, what else can he do, you know? So his brother took him out of the flat, and I never let him back in again. And the neighbors would constantly be calling the police, and it was really horrible. But I think it was that he'd done it in front of somebody else so openly, even though he'd done it in front of his sisters and his mum before in his family home. I think he'd done it in front of someone in my house, and that was the final sort of
yeah. Thank you, Tina. And it's amazing how often we hear that phrase, oh, you know what he's like.
Yeah.
And sometimes you know what she's like. You know, it's like, oh, it's okay then, you know what they're like.
Do you think, though, that his mum and his sisters have got so used to him doing what he was doing in front of them that it was just so commonalised for them?
Normalised.
Normalised, so they didn't call it out.
I think so, but I think that
As
a parent now, I think that if that was my son, I think I would have handled it very differently.
100%, yeah. Because
absolutely,
if we're trying to change things culturally, when we see this kind of stuff happen, we have to call it out. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. And I'm just wondering if they were in fear of him, or if, as Bev said, it was so normalised that it was just acceptable to them. It's never acceptable, and we should be calling it out. But I'm just wondering why they just didn't do what we would expect we would all do.
Yeah. And one of the questions I've got, and it's not always easy to answer because, you know, hindsight and that, if someone had come to you and like one of your friends and said, like, I think he's been abusive towards you, I think it's wrong what would you have said? Or did they ever say anything?
I don't recall anyone saying it very outwardly like that, but I think it was known. And I think now as well, there was a time when I was pregnant with my first son, and his dad locked me in a room, and I had to climb out of a window, and I ran down the street and I called my dad, and my dad came and got me. And I think they were aware of what was happening. And I think even now my family feel, or at least I think my dad feels a lot of guilt that he didn't step in and do something. I knew it was wrong. I knew. But it wasn't about knowing I was being abused. I knew I was being abused, but it was more about how can I get away from this without and still be safe, you know.
Absolutely.
Because even every time I chucked him out or told him to leave and said, I don't want to be with you anymore, and you know, he would always come back. You know, he would smash windows, he would kick my front door in. I lived on the first floor of a block of flats, and he would climb up onto the balcony and be smashing the windows. And
yeah,
there was a time he broke into my house and literally trashed everything. He wrote obscenities on the walls, like graffitied it on the walls. He threw bleach all over my clothes. He crushed up medication and put them in the drinks in the fridge. You know, and it was really scary. But so I knew it was wrong. The police were constantly being called by the neighbors. But it wasn't about, I knew I was being abused. I knew it was wrong. I didn't grow up in that environment, you know, and it wasn't about that. It was about, what can I do?
Yeah.
So they often say, don't they, Tina, that when you want to leave an abusive relationship, that is the most dangerous time. Yeah. And even after you do split with the abusive partner, that you are at a lot of risk at that stage. So what made him eventually leave you alone?
Honestly, I just think it was time and completely cutting him off. It was really difficult because of the children. So he always had an in, you know, I want to see the children. And so, you know, he took me through court. We went through like all the Kafka stuff, and he even went to prison for a while because he got caught robbing in the Croydon riots. And he went to prison, and at that time we were going through court, the family court, and they brought him to family court from prison to attend the hearing. And it was so embarrassing. I don't know why he wasn't embarrassed, but you know, and they gave him contact, and it was just and then he left prison, and he was on a tag. And as soon as the tag came off, he fled with the children.
Wow.
So, you know, it took me a week to get them back.
Yeah.
And to find where he was. And it was so scary, you know, and it wasn't until he did that I could say, no, you're not seeing the children anymore. Because the courts are so pro contact.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say that to you about the family courts. It's always happened, but it's become a real massive issue awareness is being raised around it now, is the parental alienation and the contact they want at all costs. But it is the abuser's way, alleged abuser, it's their way of keeping control, that power and the control over their victim is through their children and through the family courts, and it's happening a lot. And they're trying to now, like the Victim Commissioner for London and many parents who have gone through this are campaigning to make sure that parental alienation is not something that can keep being used for the abuse of the victim and the children that are going through this. So there's a lot of work being done around this at the moment, Tina.
Yeah.
But what made him eventually leave you all alone? Did he get into another relationship? Do you think that is why?
He's got another 2 children with 2 other women.
Yeah.
One of which actually lives on the same road as me.
Right.
So even then he would be coming into contact with us because he'd go to see the other child, and then he'd bump into us in the street, or he'd try to get my children to pick up his other child from school, from the local school. So it wasn't until they were old enough to say, we don't want to see you, that it kind of fizzled out a bit.
Yeah.
Wow. What one thing could you share for someone listening or watching now? Because I completely understand where you are. I've been there myself. We've all got similar experiences and some different. What one thing would you say to another person listening now who's thinking, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore?
I think it's really difficult to know what to say without knowing the circumstances. You know, I took out injunctions and non-molestation orders, and they weren't adhered to. I know how scary it is to leave. You know, I left 2 abusive relationships, and both of them, after the end of the relationship, was a really tumultuous time, a really scary time. And I think that it's really important to be safe. You just have to think of your safety. And I was lucky in that I was able to move and get away from people, so they didn't know where we were. And again, I've recently joined Croydon now have a gender-based violence expert by experience panel. So I've joined the panel, and we're going to be advising on the council's housing policy for victims of domestic violence. So hopefully we can
well done.
have some change there. But, you know, I think you need to be safe, and you need to involve. It's the shame that keeps you from talking to people, but you need people around you to help keep you safe, be it the police, be it neighbours, family, friends, work. You know, they would show up at my work and things like that. And you're so embarrassed by it. You're so ashamed, and you feel so guilty because you feel like people are like, well, what have you done to make him like that? What have you done? And he would say such disgusting things about me that I would think they're going to think that about me as well. And
absolutely.
But in order to be safe, you need to have some kind of network around you to keep you safe.
Absolutely.
But this keeps some people in relationships, doesn't it, Tina? Purely because it feels, even though it's dysfunctional and chaotic and abusive, it feels safer to be in the relationship than leaving it. And a lot of people can't get their heads around that.
No, but also when you think of the person who loves you, because that's what they're saying, if they, you know, if they're continually being negative towards you, you start to believe that. You start, you know, I remember when I was leaving my marriage, you know, how would I be able to look after my children? How could I provide for them? You know, I'm no good, I'm this, I'm that. And you start to believe it. So you're not just thinking as a, you know, the part of the shame was like, I'm an intelligent woman, you know, I know what I'm doing here. Then how could I have got myself in this situation? And that's something that is very common, isn't it, Tina?
Yeah,
you know, it's like,
definitely.
How have I accepted this for so long? But for me, what spurred me as my children were getting older, he had another affair, which gave me a reason to justify it. And that sounds awful, but it's the only way that some people can see it. But even then, that wasn't enough for some people. But I wanted to show my son and my daughter, this is not how a healthy relationship is. And I have to accept my own part, because they had never heard as well. And that's because I didn't want them to hear it. So I overprotected as well. And that's very common, isn't it, Tina?
Definitely. And I think we have to remember as well that perpetrators and abusers are not always abusing you. You know, they're master manipulators. You know, there are good times. They fool you into thinking that, you know, they're going to be great, they've changed, you know, they're doing really well, and there'll be periods where everything is hunky-dory, you know. And so, and you know, they have this mask for people outside. They can be incredibly charming. People are like, no, not him, you know, he's so lovely, you know, he works so hard, or he does, you know, all of that. And so, you know, it makes you feel like, if I do leave, who's going to believe me? You know, everyone thinks he's so great, and you know, but also you convince yourself that, do you know what, we had a good time then, what have I done, what is it that I'm doing wrong that's, you know, causing this?
Absolutely.
It's
Tina,
manipulation.
It is, and we could carry on for so long. Thank you for sharing that, because that is so important. And you know, let's be frank here, you know, my marriage has been over for 20 years, and there's still parts that I go back and think, why did I stay so long? Why
Yeah.
didn't I go earlier? So that it doesn't leave you. And I think that's important for us to share for people that are outside, but also for any woman or man, because I know some men who've been in that position as well. So, Chris, any last thoughts for you before we end this podcast today?
I mean, as always, there's a lot more to be discussed. So if Tina's up for it, a part two. So once we've heard and reviewed what we've spoken about already, I'm sure there's off conversations that we can talk about and really expand upon. So yeah, just to thank you, Tina, really for your openness and your honesty. And these conversations is what people need to hear so that they don't feel alone. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And is there anything that you'd like to say before we finish, Tina?
The only thing that I think I'd like to add is I have my own little, well, I have my family have our own little motto, and it's "We carry on." I have it tattooed on my chest here, you know, and it's a constant reminder that, you know, things can be really bad, they can, but we will carry on, you know, we will. And it's just very important to know that, you know, there is a reason to keep going, you know, we carry on.
Thank you, Tina. That's fantastic. For myself, I always love it when we have guests coming on. You know, thank you. I didn't know you before, Tina. You know, I feel an affinity now, which is amazing. That's what, you know, what we love about our podcast. We never know where it's going to go. And that's what's even more beautiful about it. So for anyone listening, if you've got any additional questions that you'd like to ask, our email is breakingthecycle2stepforward@gmail.com. We spoke about fundraising, and Tina's been fundraising fantastically. So we will also put the link underneath about fundraising for survivors of abuse. And thank you very much. And it's time to say goodbye for this podcast.
And any link to support services will be below as well. So like Women's Aid and Refuge and places like that. Okay. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Breaking the cycle to step forward. Authentic conversations from lived experience and a professional perspective in overcoming abuse with Chris Tuck and Beverley Ann.
Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle 2 Step Forward. I'm Beverley Ann and I'm here with my lovely co-host.
Hi everyone, Chris Tuck here. Hope you are all well.
And just to say, there's lots of people, and myself, including myself, who've seen numerous posts going up, Chris, about you wanting to raise £75,000. Could you tell me a little bit more, and everyone listening and watching, what that £75,000 is actually for?
Yeah, so it's really important that survivors of abuse now not only survives, but actually thrives in itself. So we need this lump sum amount of money to actually build our infrastructure, take on more trainers to deliver more courses nationwide, Bev. That is what this money is for. And you say it was a scary amount of money. In my head, I've actually got the sum of £250,000 to really make sure that we are all over the UK for victim and survivors to access the 8-week transformational course that we created and have developed with over 100 survivors. So I thought, rather than come out and say 250,000, I'll scale it down to 75,000 so that we can achieve that first step.
Absolutely, and that's brilliant. But you've actually got a campaign name, haven't you?
Yes, hashtag Do It For Survivors. So blatantly calling it out for what it is. We need this money, this investment to help victims and survivors recover from their trauma because of the abuse that they've endured, either as children, young people, or as adults, in order to help them break the cycle and to step forwards. So our podcast name there, giving us a little bit of a call out there. Yeah, to really enable us to be established as the go-to charity for recovery from trauma through holistic health.
So anybody listening who thinks, oh, I want to help fundraise, you've got some fundraise packages available, haven't you? Can you explain more about them?
Yeah, well, we've got a fundraising pack that people can download, and we're trying to get families involved, educational settings involved, corporates involved. So not only are we trying to raise funds, but we're trying to raise awareness of what we do, why we do it, and why it's important. So the fundraising pack can be downloaded from Survivors of Abuse website, and it will clearly show you that you can fundraise around anything that you want to do. So it could be a picnic, it could be a sponsored read, it could be an event, it could be skydiving, it could be absolutely anything that raises funds for our cause.
So why is this so important? And I know that sounds like a simple question, but tell me more about the workshops that people attend.
So the 8-week course that we created is psychoeducational, and it's about victims and survivors understanding that what they've gone through was not their fault. The shame and the guilt that they may be holding on to needs to be let go of. If anyone understands The Body Keeps the Score by Professor Van der Kolk, they will truly understand that the trauma impact of the abuse that we've gone through is held deep within our subconscious. And for us to let go of all of that, we need to understand what the brain and the body does, how it holds on to it, and how it can break those cycles to let go of it. And the course is based on mindset, nutrition, fitness, and stress management. So it's a 7-pillar process of understanding how you're being held back, how you can break the cycles, and how you could step forward to fulfilling your potential, finding love, life, and laughter after abuse. That's what it is all about. And we are the only charity nationwide that has a course like this that doesn't follow a medical model approach to recovery. It follows a holistic health model to recovery from trauma. And that is our USP. And that is what we want to be known for, we are known for, and we want to make it accessible to more people.
Absolutely. And I know that I've attended some of the courses as well, the workshops with you, and you have some other fabulous people as well. And you've received lots of feedback, and I know that some of the recent feedback you've received was from one particular participant who said that if I hadn't attended this, I wouldn't be here today. That's how low they were. So this is absolutely vital and important. Now, I know you founded SOB back in 2016, so this is not a new charity. This is a charity that you have founded yourself. You've self-funded. You've raised any money that you can and put that back in so that anybody attending, it's all paid for. So money doesn't stop them. Okay, it's just their time that they need to commit to. So if there's any one last thing you can say to anybody who's listened to this, who's thinking, oh, I don't know what I could do, but I'd like to do something. You've got lots of different events, and one of them is quite a big event, and it's very scary. So do you want to share that before we finish, Chris?
Yeah, we're doing a tandem skydive on the 14th of September. And I've always said to Pauline, our trustee, that I would never jump out of a plane. Never, ever, ever. guess who's jumping out of a plane, Bev? Me. So if I can do it, then I'm sure that some other brave people can step forward and come and jump out of a plane with me.
Well, I can't
I
because I'm
think you're on
actually away
holiday.
with work.
Yeah,
I'm away
exactly.
with work.
But there must be other thrill seekers out there that love a challenge, like raising money for charity, who can come and join us. And it doesn't have to be on the 14th of September. It can be anytime, anywhere nationwide where these Go skydives exist. And as long as you raise £1,000 for the charity, you get your skydive free. And anyone and everyone can get involved. They can raise money, they can donate money, they can just look at the fundraising pack to see all of the different ideas that are there in order to take part. And this isn't just about thriving as a charity. This is about surviving as a charity. The charity landscape at the moment when it comes to fundraising is very bleak, okay? And it's only going to get worse. So anyone that can come on board and raise even a few pounds for us or donate a few pounds for us, we would truly appreciate it.
Okay, I'm smiling. I couldn't think of anything worse. However, if someone steps forward with a substantial amount for sponsorship, then I'd have to rethink it myself as well. So all I can say is well done to you. And thank you so much for sharing that. And just lastly, can you say the email address again or the website address again? We will add it underneath, but Chris, if you'd like to share how to contact you.
Yep, it's www.survivesofabuse.org.uk/fundraising for the pack. Or if someone wants to email me direct, it's sobbtc@outlook.com, or they can message me on any of the social media platforms, Bev. But we're looking for corporate sponsorship. We're looking to be the charity of the year. We're looking for a patron. We're looking for more strategic trustees. So this is about building the infrastructure to move us from surviving to thriving. The more people can help us, the more we can help others.
Thank you so much. And thank you to anyone listening. And I know that there'll be many of you that are listening who are thinking, I want to have a look. Please take a look right now before it's too late. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.